Hello everyone, this is Caleb Simpson, and you're watching my walkthrough for Chrono Trigger for Nintendo DS. So in the last video, we went to the Derelict Ruins, completed it, and then made our way to Protodome, where we unlocked a gate. Now upon entering that though, we end up in this weird location called the End of Time. Now, what the End of Time becomes is sort of a hub of our adventure where we can start all of our various questing from here on out from this place. Now what this does is it gains us access to all of the gates we've unlocked so far, and so as you unlock more gates, both some of the ones we've already experienced as well as new gates and new time periods that we haven't even experienced yet, those will then be accessible here at the End of Time. So you can come back here at any time and you can travel through any gate to return here and kind of assess your situation. However, you are only able to travel in parties of 3 from now on. You can also speak with any of your other party members, your 4th or 5th, etc. party members here to swap them back and forth. Although you can just press a button now and you can just swap your characters out whenever you want, assuming you're not already in combat anyway. So from now on, you can actually swap out any of the characters in your party, but we can't travel with more than 3. So up until this point, the game has been pretty linear. They kind of shuffled us along, and a lot of times there's only one choice as far as where to go, so it's been pretty obvious what our next destination is. But now that we have access to the End of Time, we have access to all 3 of the time periods we've unlocked, and we are very quickly going to have access to even more. So that does make things a little bit more complicated. So, with everything being all open-ended, it makes it all the more important to have some manner of knowing where to go, because now the game isn't shoving it down our throats. So, if you're ever stuck, you can come here to the End of Time and speak with the old man here to get a hint on where to go next, or you can just follow along with my videos and listen to a strapping young man. So there's a bunch of different things we can do here at the End of Time, and one of those things is you can heal whenever you want by inspecting the sparkly on the left, and then the other sparkly you can save at whenever you want. I'd encourage you to save at the End of Time whenever you're passing through, because very honestly, I don't really feel like they have save points anywhere near as often as they should in this game. Like, sometimes some play sessions you're honestly like just playing straight for half an hour or longer, and there's no save points at all. And so I would encourage you to save whenever you can, because if you pass by one, then it could be an hour or longer before you see another one, and that could be a problem. Now, if you try to leave, the old man will call out to you, and that's because he really encourages you to go inspect the door over to his top right, where you can meet up with Spekkio. So the Master of War here will then teach your characters how to use magic. He has a whole bunch of exposition this first time you're talking with him, and he makes you run around in circles for a little bit, but he will then teach you how to use magic, which is super powerful. It's a very big upgrade right now. You definitely want to unlock this as soon as possible. Now, in order to learn magic, you can only do so on characters that are born within a certain time frame and who don't currently know how to use magic. You have to have the right genes, or whatever, that was developed through the centuries or whatever. So about 2/3 of the characters we can unlock in the game are able to learn magic. So you want to bring them to Spekkio whenever you get them, because you want them to learn magic as soon as possible. And apparently what we've been doing so far isn't actually magic or something. I don't know. Flamethrowers are not considered magic, I guess. Well, maybe it's technology. I guess that would make sense technically. Maybe Luca could have an invention, I suppose. But anyways, and then like Chrono has his wind slash. I don't know. Whatever. Apparently that's not magic. So he's going to teach us actual magic, which is just the next tier of our tech abilities. So we're going to get a new tech ability for each one of our characters right now, which is super awesome. That will eventually lead to some really awesome dual techs as well. So apparently how one learns magic is by running in circles, because that sounds like a totally productive use of our time and very magical. You want to start at the door and then work your way clockwise around the room 3 times. The one thing to watch out for is to not walk out the door, which is actually a lot easier to happen than you would think. So you want to work your way hitting each corner, so hold right, hold down, then go left again, but this time when you get to the door, be sure to go up just a little bit so you don't go out the door. That's the one thing to watch out for. So once again, go down, go left, lift up a little bit at the door, go left, up, right, and just make sure you hit all the corners really deep would be my recommendation. I have failed at this just by being lazy and not going to the full corner, so I think that's really what matters. I think it's the corners are actually I think that's what the game is counting. I don't think it actually counts the walls at all. But anyways, once you've completed your task, go back and speak with Spekkio, who will then teach you magic. What this does is it will allow you to use more powerful abilities and it will also announce the affinities that each character has, which is listed on their profiles. So Chrono is light, Marl is water, and Luca is fire affinity. Now, whenever you speak with Spekkio, he always offers for you to practice against him using your magic, and this is a boss that you can fight throughout the game, and he steadily upgrades along with your party. So he has various forms that you can see him in, and in every case, you always want to use your strongest magic. So in this case, we just learned Star Ice, Star Lightning, and Star Fire. You want to use those abilities against him to damage him. Spekkio is very resistant to physical damage, and he's basically only vulnerable to magic, so that's what you want to use against him. So meanwhile, though, he does dish out some magic damage of his own, so the more magic resistance you have, the better you can hold up, and it's usually smart to leave at least 1, if not even 2 characters kind of dedicated to healing. So usually you have one character who's constantly healing, and then one character one character who's only doing damage, one character who's healing, and one character who alternates back and forth between healing or damage, and then potentially even with potions. So Spekkio has multiple forms, and each form has different prizes the first time you defeat it. So this one will give us a magic capsule, which will allow us to upgrade our character. Super awesome. This is actually the most rare form. Most players will never see this because it's very uncommon, because the only way you can see this form ever is if you go through the game while avoiding as much combat as possible. So very rare. Most players don't even know that this form exists. So thus they totally miss out on this particular prize. So what determines his form is the average level of all the characters you own. So that includes Robo. So Robo's currently level 11, two of my characters are level 9, and then Marl is level 8. So Marl being level 8 is actually what is allowing me to get this boss, because this boss is only available between levels 1 and 9. So I'm actually borderline, like almost too much XP for this boss to even appear. In fact, I practiced the game real quick, and I played through, and I had too much XP when I got here. I only had like 1 or 2 more fights, and I was kind of shell-shocked. Like, really? I thought I did a really good job avoiding combat. I couldn't believe it. So I actually did go back through and then re-record some of those sections to make sure that I was staying as low level as possible. So that's what I was doing for this walkthrough. And I feel like that was smart, because it was like that's what people need help with. Like, people just say, oh, just don't fight stuff. Like, that's not helpful, So I really wanted to show that for the first part of the game, because that's like the challenging thing that people actually want help with. So our next objective is to head to 1000 AD. We only have one portal that leads there right now, so that's our next objective. Real quick, I'm going to do one more optional thing, which is go to the Arena of Ages, which is a DS Remake exclusive area. So like I said, this area is in the DS Remake only. I've actually played through this game several times on the Super Nintendo. Meanwhile, when I got the remake, I've played through it like twice, but I didn't mess with the Arena of Ages. I kind of took one look at it as the new bonus feature and was like, that looks like a waste of time. I don't want to do it. And I've heard online you can really sink some serious hours into this, so I was like, I don't know. For the walkthrough, what I was planning on doing tentatively was just like finding some good guides online and then just to redirect people to the appropriate resources, but not actually cover it. However, what I found was a lot of the guides I found online were really vague. They didn't really seem very good. So, and some of the advice they gave I actually disagree with. So I was like, okay, fine. So I decided I was going to go ahead and dive into it. So I did. And I spent several days here. I have hours of footage, and I have all this stuff cataloged. So I actually have like proof of what the different items do, etc. You know what I mean? I can very definitively look at it and see. Now, that all being said, I don't want to show all that footage because I have hours of it and it's just kind of pointless. Huge waste of everyone's time. No reason to go into that for the walkthrough. So I might make a separate Arena of Ages guide down the road. We'll see what happens. But for the walkthrough, what I really want to do is like show you everything you can do as soon as possible when it's available throughout the game, because of the progress of the Arena Ages matches the rest of the game. So I want to show you when stuff is available. I'm going to give you just a bullet point list, like these are the good strategies to use. These are the things that are super effective. We're going to get the most bang for your buck, like bam, 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 here you go, do these things, here's the reasons why. There you go, good items, let's move on. And then that's it. And so you're not wasting as much time here as I did. So that's what I want to do for you guys. I'll make it comedic, make it quick and snappy, but that's what we're doing. Here we go. So when you arrive for the first time, you'll meet up with the Professor Oak wannabe who has a bunch of exposition, and then we get to choose our Pokemon starter. You have choices of Fire, Water, Light, and Shadow. Now, as far as pros and cons between them, honestly, there isn't really much. Like, yes, certain abilities are good against, like, I'm going to pick a Light Smidge, and if I use Light abilities with him, then he does more damage because he is Light Element. So that just means you're locked into using one particular element, ideally. And so that's nice and simple, like, whatever. But other than that, it literally makes no difference. And honestly, before long, you're going to be maxed out on stats anyways, like all the enemies you're fighting or whatever. It doesn't matter. Completely irrelevant. So just pick whatever flavor suits your fancy. There you go. Next, we're going to get the Monster Trainer Starter Kit. What this does is it gives us a bunch of consumables that are for the Arena of Ages only. Now, you can use these either in combat as consumables, like potions, basically, or temporary buff items, or you can use them as consumables to send away with your monster to boost various stats. And they all kind of do what you'd think they do. So like the Shield Cloak boosts defensive stats. Meanwhile, something else will boost the offensive stats. Some of them will boost like particular elements. So it all makes sense. It's all pretty self-explanatory. The one thing they don't say is Slops. I'm pretty sure Slops gives a slight increase to health, not very much, but it's also the cheapest item to train them with. And you're going to be training a lot. So what I'd recommend you do is buy Slops from the new up north, which only costs 100 gold, and train your monster with Slops. And the reason I recommend that is because it's cheaper, but also because HP is the hardest stat to level. It's the one that takes the longest and takes the most number of trainings. Like, all of your stats are going to increase over time steadily, but HP takes a very long time. So what I found is, after a lot of testing and stuff like that, is I found that Slops was overall the most efficient. I know that sounds a little bit ironic in my personal opinion. The other stats, the max stats are 99, and you're going to gain somewhere between like 2 and like 7 stats in every other category every single time you send your guy off to train. So getting to 99 in all the stats doesn't take that long, actually. It's like 10 trainings and you're done. Meanwhile, HP takes like 40 trainings. So that being said, doing everything you can to boost HP is better. So there's tons more stuff to say about the Arena of Ages. I'm going to move on for right now. So the dude is going to be off training for 10 minutes and we want to come back. So the first thing you want to do is go save. This will keep track of your progress anyways. And at this point, you can turn off the game and come back after 10 minutes and then open up your file and it will count towards that. And you can just go ahead and you'll immediately see the monster coming back from training, and it's great. So that's one way you can do that. By the way, you can also access the Arena of Ages from the title screen. So just make sure that every time you send your monster off to train, and also every time he comes back from training, try to be in the habit of saving real quick. Because if you forget to and you turn off your console, you'll turn it back on and they're coming back from training again, and you never actually like kept your progress. You know what I mean? So just be in the habit of saving every time you do something. So anyways, we got to wait for 10 minutes. I can either turn off my DS and then come back after a little bit, or I can go do some side quests. So first of all, go to Protodome at 2300 AD. There is a strength capsule just south of the gate that we weren't able to get before because there was like a cinematic. So now we're actually here for real. And it's kind of got this weird sweet spot. Just keep mashing the A button as you're just south of it, going left and right, and you'll eventually find it. So collect that strength capsule, super great. Next, there is another optional strength capsule you can get by racing against Johnny. And in order to do so, we need to find a quick item real quick. But yeah, the race against Johnny is awful. It's absolutely atrocious. So it's really, really difficult. It's really boring. It's just obnoxious, definitely frustration inducing. So if you want to do this with me, you can. How this works is there's actually an area in between the two like race car scenes, which is part of Lab 32/Site 32. And there's a bunch of monsters here in between. I avoided this area earlier because I was trying to avoid XP, but now that I have gotten that Spekkio secret, I can now go through here safely enough. Also, now the fact that we have magic is super nice too. I'd recommend you just use that against all these guys if this is the point that you're fighting them, because that's our highest tier ability right now. So if there is 3 or more enemies, then probably just Fire Whirl is the best choice for this whole area. Otherwise, probably just single targeting most of the stuff down, especially the mutants. You could use Star Ice and Star Fire on them in particular. You can also use Star Lightning. However, Chrono's magic damage isn't the greatest, especially if you have like a Power Glove on him. It'll increase his physical damage. So it might be better to just use his regular attack for Chrono, but have the other 2 girls use spells, which makes sense. I mean, they're your spellcasters anyways. But also, fun fact for you, by the way, is you have, now that we have Star Ice and Star Fire, you can combine them to use the dual tech Antipode Bomb, which I did here. It does really good damage anyway, but it's very expensive. It does damage in a little area, so if you have multiple guys close together, you can also, that would make it more efficient. Use it usually to hit multiple guys at once. However, something to know about it that's interesting is that it's not fire or ice element, it's actually shadow, which is kind of interesting. What's cool about that too, especially with this team composition, is that this team, Marl, Chrono, and Luca, have access to all 5 elemental types. So they have physical, and then they have fire, ice, lightning, and shadow, which is very interesting because if you have particular enemies where they're susceptible to a particular element, you can cover all bases with this particular team composition, which is very interesting. In fact, there's times when, so that's ideally when you really want to use Antipode Bomb, is if an enemy is susceptible to that. In fact, there's a boss later on in this video that I kill, and I almost one-shot him just by using Antipode Bomb, which is, like, it's just dumb how powerful it is. So, in specific situations anyways, that ability is really cool, and just to be aware of that, there's not really very many sources of shadow damage in this game, other than, like, Robo has a little bit, and then like Antipode Bomb, and then there's a character later who has some shadow abilities as well, but it's kind of rare. So like I explained earlier, in between the 2 like racing areas where you challenge Johnny, there is this whole area where there's full of enemies in between. You just walk there, either from the left side or the right side, doesn't matter. And in that middle area, closer to the right, there is a chest containing the race recorder / race log. This is an optional item that if you bring it back to Johnny, you can then keep track of your high scores. And then you can also change your racing mode. So you can speak with RXXR at any point to change your racing mode between either the Nitro mode, which allows you to boost, or the Free Look mode. Now, in Free Look mode, you can press L and R, but you don't have access to boost. This allows you to rotate your camera to either in front or behind you, which makes it a lot easier to bounce against Johnny. This is the best way to get a high score, and it's also very tricky to pull off, but basically, the thing to know is if I hit like his right side, then he's going to start trying to move over to the left, and if I hit his left side, he's going to start moving over to the right. So ideally what happens is if you can keep bouncing back and forth, you can just keep like ping-ponging over and over and over again and stay in front of him, and that's the trick. So the thing to realize about that as far as how you pull that off is that because this game is almost like you're sliding on ice, you have to preemptively start, you have momentum to it, you have to start moving left and right before you actually arrive. So like, if I'm like heading towards his right side and it's pretty obvious I'm going to hit his right side, I need to start holding left before I even hit him. So that by the time that I do hit his right side, I've already slowed down and started going to the other direction instead. And that is the trick. That's the hard part. It's getting the bouncy things to start happening in the first place is very difficult. Once you can pull it off, though, you can usually get a bunch of bounces in a row, and that is how you crank up your high score. So I hung out here for like an hour and a half or whatever, and I recorded most of that, and I kept trying over and over again. I probably did this race like a good, I don't know, 30 times or more, or 40 times. I don't even know how many times I did it. I was recording it all, and then I canceled it, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start the recording like after I start doing good, so I don't have gigs and gigs of files. So that's what you're watching right now. I got like halfway through the race, and I had 1,000 points, and I was like, okay, started the recording. And you'll see I keep getting these sweet spots where I'm bouncing and then I fall apart. But I usually bounce like 3 times, somewhere between 3 and 8 times, and then I fall behind and then I have to try and find that sweet spot again. But that's my experience. I feel like what I want to say is like if you can bounce in front of him, your points rack up very, very quickly and you lose points when you're behind him. So like what happens is it's kind of like the difference between 700 points and 1,500 points is actually not that much of a margin, if that makes sense. It's kind of like because if you can find that sweet spot, it's actually, I wouldn't say easy, but it's not too bad to maintain it. It's just getting that sweet spot in the first place. That's the hard part. So just something to be aware of. So it's unlikely to make more than like 1,300 every time. You're probably more likely you'll make less than 1,000 most of the times you race against him, and then occasionally you'll find those sweet spots, and that's when, bam, now all of a sudden you're making good points. So anyways, if you can make above 1,500, you'll win the prize, which is the strength capsule. There is other goodies you can grab here as well. I really don't think it's super worth your time. And even the strength capsule itself, I don't really super think it's worthwhile overall. It's just too hard. It's just really time consuming. It's just frustrating. I feel like whoever designed this game, designed the racing game, didn't really think about it too hard, or I don't know. I feel like it's designed too frustratingly to be a good thing. But anyway, that's my personal opinion. So do it if you want to. Next, I'm heading through Lab 16 to head back to Banger Dome and Tram Dome real quick. And we don't have to do this. One of the things I'm doing real quick is I am fighting some enemies because so far in this game I've been avoiding XP, so I'm just making a little bit back real quick. And of the various fights, these shadows in particular are the easiest thing because they're really weak. They die to magic in one hit. So because all these characters have access to magic, I can kill everything real quick. So I'm just getting some XP here as long as I'm passing through anyway to get my character levels a little bit closer to Robo, to where I should be for this point in the game. So I was saying earlier in the walkthrough that this fight was unavoidable, and I was mistaken by that. I did make a notation on that video, but I didn't bother to redo the commentary because it would have taken more time, and I was like, whatever, it's good enough, whatever. So I made a notation. So this little area off to the left, you can go through here to avoid any fights, and you can even see it on the map and stuff too, but I was just brain farting at the time. It actually is kind of fine because I could allocate some XP while I was working my way to Spekkio, so it's okay. Anyways, our goal is to go to Banger Dome, and I went through all that for 2 reasons. One was to get a little bit of XP for my character so I could fight the next tier of Spekkio, but also to unlock both of these gates. So if you go through either the Banger Dome gate in 2300 AD or through the Guardia Forest gate in 1000 AD, now all those guards are no longer there. If you go through either one of those, it will unlock the alternate gate as well. Of the two of those, Guardia Forest is definitely a lot easier. You can go to either one. The Banger Dome one is definitely more out of our way, but I was getting XP anyways, because I'm about to fight Spekkio here in a little bit to fight his second form. But before that, I'm going to go to the Arena of Ages because I can check up on my little smidge who has meanwhile come back from training. Now, I didn't realize at the time that doing multiple trainings in a row is bad. It actually loses you some stats if you do that. What you want to do is you alternate between training and battle. So I should have, at this point, done one just tier 1 battle for 100 gold, and then after that, regardless of if he wins or loses, doesn't matter, then I can send him training again. Now, quick note about the stat gain. He got a lot of magic defense and magic stat in particular because I gave him a magic item to train with. If I had given him something else, then it would have evened everything out more. Now, as far as the most worthwhile items, I feel like the shield cloak in particular probably gives you the best balance of stats in general, which is important. But otherwise, as far as the age to send them to, I'd recommend slops or shield would be my highest recommendation. And as far as a place to send them to, strength is nice to make them have a lot of attack to kill stuff early on, but otherwise just sending them to present to get as much HP as possible would be the best bonus for you overall. Just to evenly spread out the stats so you're not too heavy-handed focusing on any one thing. Like I was saying before, you'll get kind of an even distribution of stats just in general if you focus on health, is what I found. But yeah, huge mistake here because I didn't realize at the time that training multiple times is bad. You'll lose, you'll basically gain the specific stats you gave from that time period, but then you'll lose other stats. And you'll always lose trust, but you'll also lose a little bit of something else. But if you battle in between, then there's no loss of stats at all. So it's kind of like if you train multiple times, you kind of just break even. It's just bad. So anyways, train, fight, train, fight, train, fight. That's all you have to do. Just use the tier 1 100 gold to boost your stats for a while. That's all you have to do. It's fine. So next I'm going to go fight Spekkio's second form. Now as long as I'm doing this though too, I'm going to introduce Robo to him, which I haven't done that yet. So if you have Robo in your party, then Spekkio will say, hey, like, unfortunately Robo cannot learn magic. He does not have what it takes to do that. However, just as a comment, he does deal shadow damage with his lasers. So enemies that are weak to shadow will take extra damage from Robo's lasers. Now Robo's lasers are not really the very good spell in general. So they don't really do very high damage just because Robo's magic stat is so low. So just as a comment, I wouldn't necessarily use him for magic damage as is. Now I'm going to go ahead and fight Spekkio. What I want is magic damage dealers to deal with him. So that's what I'm going to be doing. This is his second form. This is the first form that most people will see because Prehistoric Frog is only available from levels 0 to 9. This one is available from levels 10 to 19. My average player level right now is level 10. That's why I got a little bit of XP. But this is also like basically the hardest point I could possibly fight this guy. I'm at the lowest level possible to actually do it. So this is actually pretty rough. Now, as far as strategies for you, if you're struggling with this, just know he only does single target attacks in this form, and he does like 170 damage or so. It's pretty awful, which will almost kill each one of your characters. Now, Marl's and Robo's heals are too slow. They're just too slow speed right now to be able to keep up with this. So instead, what I'm doing is I'm going to have to use, and Marl doesn't heal enough anyway. So if she's using Aura, I have to supplement that healing with some other character also using a regular potion. So, instead, if I'm using potions anyways, what I've decided to do is Chrono is slightly faster than Spekkio. So what I'm doing is I'm just healing with a mid potion every single time he has a turn. So Spekkio attacks, Chrono heals. Spekkio attacks, Chrono heals with a potion. And then meanwhile, I have my 2 magical damage dealers, which is the only damage that he can take anyway. I have my 2 magic damage dealers using their dual tech Antipode Bomb for massive damage on Spekkio. So that's my recommendation as far as a strategy on how to defeat this boss. So once you defeat Spekkio for the first time in each one of his forms, you get some goodies. So this form, I'm going to go ahead and get a magic capsule and a bunch of ethers. That's great, got the prize. You can keep fighting him if you want to consecutively, but there's no reason to do that. It's just to play around, but I don't think it's worth it. So just get the goodies and then go ahead and leave. And that's all we had to do here. Man, so many side questy things in this video, but we're finally ready to continue on with the main quest, but there's a lot of stuff to cover there, so I'll actually be breaking that up into the next video. So just join me for the next one where we'll head back to 1000 AD and continue on with the main story. So that's actually the end of this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this and found it helpful, be sure to throw a like on it and subscribe so you can stay tuned for more content just like this. As always, thank you guys for watching. Have an amazing day, and I'll see you next time.